In 1882, workers in Barcelona laid the first stone of a church. In 2026, a crane lifted the final arm of a 17-meter cross 172.5 meters above the city. And that same church officially became the tallest church in the world, 144 years after construction began. For more than 130 years, this never-ending construction site had no valid building permit. And yet, construction never really stopped. Because this is La Sagrada Familia, the Temple of the Holy Family in Barcelona. A vision that looked almost impossible to build. In June 2026, the Jesus Christ Tower of the Sagrada Familia was blessed and consecrated by Pope Leo XIV on the 100th anniversary of the death of its architect Antoni Gaudí. But the idea to build this church did not start with Gaudí. It began with Josep Maria Bocabella, a deeply religious publisher who wanted an expiatory temple, a church paid for by donations to atone for people's sins. The project was conceived in the 1870s as a conventional neo-Gothic church. Construction officially started on March 19, 1882, led by architect Francisco de Paula del Villar. Within a year, almost everything changed. What would you do if everyone criticized your design? If they dismissed it as traditional and uninspired? Francisco de Paula del Villar decided to walk away. The commission passed to a 31-year-old architect named Antoni Gaudí. He threw out the conventional plans and imagined a basilica unlike anything Europe had ever seen. 18 towers, columns branching like trees, facades that told the entire story of Christ in stone. Gaudí knew he would never see it finished. He famously said, "My client is not in a hurry." He didn't know it would take 144 years just to see the Christ Tower completed, and that work on the rest of the church would be expected to continue until around 2033. But he also didn't know what the church would have to survive. 2 world wars, a civil war that burned his plans, arson, and a pandemic that shut down construction for months and slashed the ticket revenue that funds everything. From the outside, Sagrada Familia looks like a frozen explosion of stone and glass, covered in natural forms. Underneath that drama is a very precise system. The basilica is organized around 18 towers, 12 for the apostles, 4 for the evangelists, 1 for the Virgin Mary, and the tallest for Jesus Christ at the center. At 172.5 meters, the Christ Tower pushed Sagrada Familia above every other church on earth, taller than St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But it is exactly 1 meter lower than Montjuic Hill, Barcelona's highest natural point. Human architecture, Gaudí believed, should never surpass God's landscape. Inside, he designed the structure like a stone forest. Instead of heavy Gothic walls and external buttresses, loads flow through columns that twist and branch like trees, carrying the weight of the towers above. One central column alone carries up to 6,000 tons from the tower it supports. Today's architects have powerful software for that kind of geometry. Gaudí didn't. His method was physical and radical. He used hanging chain models, flipping gravity upside down to see how forces wanted to flow, and plaster models carved by hand. To him, these models explained everything. To everyone else, they were mysterious sculptures that needed translation. And the Sagrada Familia needed more architects and sculptors. On June 7, 1926, Gaudí was struck by a tram. He died 3 days later at 73, buried in the crypt of his own unfinished church. By then, less than a quarter of the basilica was built. Work continued under his collaborator, Domènec Sugranyes, until Spain tore itself apart. In July 1936, days after the Spanish Civil War began, anarchist militants stormed the Sagrada Familia workshop. They burned drawings and photographs, smashed plaster models, and set fire to the crypt. The loss was devastating. Most of Gaudí's detailed plans, scale models, and notes disappeared. 12 people linked to the project were killed during the war. Sugranyes himself died in 1938. When architect Francesc de Paula Quintana took over after 1939, he wasn't starting from a drawing board. He was starting from a pile of rubble. Workers spent a decade collecting thousands of fragments of smashed plaster, trying to reassemble Gaudí's geometry like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. But without Gaudi's full instructions, how could anyone claim to be building his church? The hardest engineering problem inside Sagrada Familia isn't the towers, it's the columns. The basilica's main nave has 36 interior columns supporting the roof and towers. Each one is unique, none is straight. For comparison, Notre Dame in Paris has about 10 primary columns doing similar work. Every Sagrada column starts as a polygon at the base, rotates as it rises, transitions into a different polygon, then splits into multiple branches near the ceiling. The surfaces aren't simple cylinders. They are twisted, double-curved forms, like a sheet of paper you twist while you pull on opposite corners. There are practically no flat faces or right angles. When the Civil War fire destroyed Gaudi's models, architects didn't just lose pretty sculptures. They lost the exact twist angles, branch points, and connection geometries that made the structure work. Early architectural software couldn't handle that. So, in the 1980s, architect Mark Burry looked outside architecture. He and his team applied software originally designed for aircraft wings. By feeding in surviving measurements and partial fragments, they were able to reconstruct how the columns were meant to safely support such enormous loads. Solving the math created a new problem. How do you carve stone like that? Each major column requires between 800 and 1,200 individual stone blocks, each with a unique 3D shape. Even a small error in one block would compound. The column's tip could end up misaligned by half a meter. The branches wouldn't meet. The vaults wouldn't close. Dutch engineers built CNC milling machines specifically for Sagrada Familia. The robot carved thousands of stones with extreme precision. At the same time, the towering Christ spire and other upper structures adopted a modular system. Instead of stacking loose stones manually 170 meters in the air, engineers assemble large panels in a controlled workshop. Each finished panel weighs 7 to 10 tons and acts as its own structural unit. 8 panels form one complete ring of the tower. These panels are lifted by crane only when winds are low. When they swing into position, workers have about 1 millimeter of tolerance for the bolt holes to align. If anything is off, they have to grind and adjust the stone in the sky. Inside the tower, steel bars and cables run through the stone, turning separate modules into one continuous, pre-stressed spine. To the outside world, the result behaves like a monolithic stone tower, but structurally, it's a hybrid stone and steel system tuned to resist wind and seismic vibrations. And all of this, for more than a century, was built without a fully regularized permit. The church believed it was on solid legal ground, but the authorization they relied on came from an entity that was independent at the time and had never been updated. Eventually, the city of Barcelona took the case to court. The operators of the Sagrada Familia were ordered to pay 36 million euros. With all these obstacles, war, lost plans, extreme geometry, financial shocks, and legal battles, it seemed almost impossible to complete Gaudi's dream. Yet when the last piece of the cross locked into place at 172.5 meters, it finally answered a question Gaudi never lived to see resolved. What does the peak of his stone forest actually look like against the Barcelona sky?